So, in the wake of the Ebola virus outbreak in 2014, President Obama warned the American people that another disease of that nature was possible and emphasized the importance of preparing for the next deadly disease to reach the U.S.
There may and likely will come a time in which we have both an airborne disease that is deadly. And in order for us to deal with that effectively, we have to put in place an infrastructure, not just here at home, but globally, that allows us to see it quickly, isolate it quickly, respond to it quickly. So that if and when a new strain of flu, like the Spanish flu, crops up 5 years from now or a decade from now, we've made the investment. And we're further along to be able to catch it. It is a smart investment for us to make.
Mika, listen to those words.
Yeah.
Where we can see it quickly, isolate it quickly, respond to it quickly. Our government has failed on all 3 points.
And joining us now, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations and former National Security Advisor to President Obama, Susan Rice. She has a new piece in the New York Times this week entitled, "Trump is the wartime president we have, not the one we need." And Susan, it's great to see you. Thank you for coming on. I mean, there's so many different things we're going to talk about, including the preparation that the Obama White House gave to the Trump White House. You met with the National Security Advisor. Of course, that was several National Security Advisors ago. One example of how Americans are paying the price for the instability and chaos inside the White House.
Well, that's exactly right, Mika, but it's more than instability and chaos. I did spend 12 hours over 4 sessions briefing General Michael Flynn, my successor, about the various threats we face. And of course, prominent among them was the risk of a global pandemic. We understood this risk to be real, as you just heard President Obama say in 2014. We had been through the 2009 H1N1 flu pandemic. We'd been through Ebola and Zika. The Bush administration before us had dealt with H5N1, a very deadly strain of flu that thankfully didn't spread as far and as fast as it could have. But we've known, because of our expertise in global health and our intelligence community and the like, that we were overdue a global pandemic, that it wasn't just something that we could predict. It was inevitable. The only question was when. And that's why during the transition, we spent time trying to prepare our successors. We provided a 69-page playbook, in effect, a war plan for the incoming administration to take off the shelf. I don't think they ever took it off the shelf. They probably put it in the trash can, given how much regard they had for anything we passed on. We established an office under my leadership in the National Security Council called the Global Health Security and Biodefense Office, with senior experts whose singular role was to scan the globe for these types of potential outbreaks, to flag them early, and enable us with others to get on top of them so that they did not become epidemics, much less pandemics. So unfortunately, all of that has been discarded to our great detriment.
So let's talk about one of the things that the president says at just about every press conference, which is just a flat-out lie. And that's when he says that nobody could have seen this coming. Well, we saw the clip of President Obama in 2014 predicting this. Go back to 2005. George W. Bush was talking about it. Bill Gates in 2015. Even HHS Secretary Azar in 2019 said a pandemic was what kept him up at night. But then the president was even getting warnings in early January from the CDC, from his National Security Council, from the intel community in his daily briefings. Susan, this was something, I mean, the alarms were going off for this president for a long time, were they not?
Absolutely. I mean, you just cataloged in good shorthand the many, many warnings he received. And the early warnings, let's talk about warning. Warning is both strategic, a major threat that we know is coming, and it can be tactical, which in this case it was. It's coming now, and it's coming from China. That's what he was told in his presidential daily briefing in early January. And so there is literally no excuse for this administration's lack of preparedness. 2 full months were absolutely squandered. You know, the White House was notified in early January, first from the head of the CDC and the FDA that something was coming. They had heard that from China. The White House at senior levels at that moment should have been on this like the crisis we knew it had the potential to be, and started very quickly and urgently in the first instance to try to create and produce and distribute the testing that is absolutely essential to getting on top of something like this. We've heard, ad nauseum how important testing is. We had the capacity to create and distribute a workable test. We failed that mission. We didn't look to others quickly enough, the private sector, universities, foreign sources, including the Germans, the WHO. And so we were behind the curve. But the other thing we should have done very early on in the beginning of the year, in early January, was to act on the recognition that we are all fully aware of, anybody who's worked on this, that our medical system, our health system in the United States on a normal day is in no way, shape, or form configured to deal with a crisis of this magnitude. We don't have the beds, we don't have the ventilators, we don't have the personal protective equipment like masks, but we have the capacity to surge to get them. And those 2 months in which we didn't move with anything like the speed or the efficacy that was required set us back in an extraordinary way, so that it wasn't until March when we started scrambling for these materials. We should have done that from the get-go, and had we done it from the outset, we would have been far better prepared. We wouldn't have put our health workers and our frontline first responders in such grave danger. And the number of Americans who would contract the disease and die from the disease would be far fewer.
Ambassador Rice, it's Willie Geist. You're right to point to all those failures leading up to this point, but here we are. So as someone who has had her hands on the levers of government and power and knows how to move things around, what can we be doing as a country this morning? What can the federal government be doing this morning to at least slow what's happening right now and hope that it doesn't spread to some of the areas that have not yet seen coronavirus? Where should we be as a federal government? Where should we be as a country right now?
Well, Willie, that's exactly the right question for today, because we've lost this time, but what we do going forward, of course, still matters enormously. The first thing is that everybody, each of us as individuals, each of us as localities and states, and nationwide, we have to continue and intensify our efforts at social distancing. There is no other better remedy than for all of us to take this as seriously as it is. It's dead serious, literally. And we need to have the fortitude and the patience, as painful as this is, particularly economically, to stick with it as long as is needed, not only to bend the curve, but to put us in a place where we can safely and sustainably reopen. And that's going to be, if done properly, a gradual process. The next thing, Willie, is we need to run this war, and it is a war, with the national unity and the coordination of effort that any war requires. We don't fight a world war with each of the 50 states doing their own thing, working against each other, competing for the same ammunition and materials, but yet that's the kind of jungle chaos that President Trump has fomented. Rather than lead, rather than step up and say, I'm the commander-in-chief, this is a war, we're going to get this done and do it together, he's attacking his political opponents, he's attacking reporters, he's attacking governors, he's denigrating people, and most importantly, he's basically putting all of the responsibility on these governors to do it by themselves, rather than coordinate the supply effort, the procurement effort, the distribution effort in an apolitical way. He's playing political games, and he's posturing the federal government, as, to use his own words, as a backup to the states. Now, when and what war is the federal government a backup? The federal government needs to lead and coordinate, and that is his job, and he is failing it utterly.
All right. Thank you so much, Susan Rice. We greatly appreciate you being here. Greatly appreciate you sharing your insights with us and with our viewers.
That'd be so
It's so
frustrating for
important.
her.
Thank you.
Thank you
you.
very much.
Let's.